My name is Richard Furrow, and I can say I am cloud hired.
That yes, come and join and get cloud hired. I'm cloud hired.
I'm Cloud Hired.
I'm Cloud Hired.
Hey, Go Cloud Architect family. I'm Cloud Hired.
So, I'm Cloud Hired, guys!
So I'll just say I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm Cloud Hired, thanks to Go Cloud Architects.
It worked for me, and now I'm Cloud Hired. Because of Google Architect program, I am Cloud Hired. See!
I am Cloud Hired. Thank you, Mike and the GlowCloud team.
Welcome, everyone. This is Michael Gibbs, and I'm joined here by Mark Milovanovic, and we're here to help you build your technology career. Maybe you'd like a career as a cloud architect, or a security architect, or a cloud security architect, or a network architect, or an enterprise architect. Whatever your career goal, we desire to help you. My name is Mike Gibbs. I'm the CEO of Go Cloud Careers, and I've done pretty much every architecture role you can think of. Cloud architect, network architect, security architect, business architect, enterprise architect. And I've spent more than 2 decades helping people just like you get your first tech job, get promoted in tech. You can find people that I've trained that are working at AWS, at Apple, at Cisco, at Google, at IBM, Accenture, Deloitte, KPMG, Capgemini, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Barclays Bank, JP Morgan Chase Bank, Credera, LeaseWeb, Caliant, Palo Alto Network. So pretty much everywhere. And I'm joined here by our Chief Technology Officer, Mark Milovanovic. So he is also a Cisco certified network. We're both Cisco certified internet network experts, of course, across a couple of decades together. Mark is an expert on software-defined network, and where mine is more routing and switching, but together we've done it all. And he's also here to guide me. So bring us your questions so we can help you. I don't want you to do what most people do, which is make a lot of mistakes along the way. You know, it's been said that a wise man learns from their mistakes, which is true. But an even wiser man learns from the mistakes of others. So after coaching people for 2.5 decades, we know the mistakes that people make. So maybe you can learn from their mistakes so you don't have to make any on your own. So that's the goal. But, you know, whatever we can do to help you. So please bring in your questions. Mark, do you want to say anything before we begin?
Yeah, definitely. Don't build your own roads if you don't need to, if you can use somebody else's roads. So basically take advantage of the journey that people have done, the mistakes they have made, valuable lessons you can learn them. And the wonderful about all this is that, guess what? You don't have to make those same mistakes. And even if they're not mistakes, sessions like this are fantastic for everybody, because what you can sometimes do is you can shave off sometimes a few years of trying to get where you want to end up at. And that's valuable in itself. You know, imagine being able to decrease the amount of time it takes you to get the job that you really want, those 6 figures, so maybe, you know, low 7, whatever it may be. This is what these sessions are for. Take advantage of them. We always like to say is don't be shy. And if you want to be an architect, guess what? You're going to want to be in the mode of asking questions. So we welcome you to do so. Aside from that, let's see what questions we have, unless you have something else to add to it, Mike.
Well, I want to add something. And then I'm hoping Jose, because he's got a lot of good questions, actually responds to some of the questions I have. I asked him a few. He's given us great responses. I want others. So to begin, let's talk about some things we have for you. We're going to have a completely free CCSP bootcamp. And we're going to run this for approximately 2 weeks. It's going to take 2 weeks for us to go through this. This is one of my favorite cloud security certifications. it's a certification where you will learn something that's valuable, as opposed to what I call a pre-fundamental certification. This is a good security fundamental certification. So keep that in the back of your mind. So great option for that. It's completely free. It's going to be 2 hours all day, every day of the week. For 3 hours all day, every day for 2 weeks straight. And we have many more other security things coming for you. So there's that. I also want to tell you that on Thursday, we have a How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar. And it's going to be completely free. We'll go over the role. We'll talk about what we actually do. And it's completely free. It'll be on Zoom. You can ask us any questions you want. And we also have a Cloud Architect Career Guide. And in that, it will tell you everything that we actually do and learn. So it's all free. Come join us.
All right. Then you mentioned that you wanted to tackle Jose's question. It looks like that's a multi-part.
Yeah.
So let's get started with the first part of Jose's question, and then we'll pivot from there. So Jose V says, I want to get into cybersecurity, but after getting my certification and a few projects under my belt, job openings are plenty, but no feedback or need more experience. Now I'm considering going cloud. And I believe he mentioned also that he got his Azure AZ900 as well as Security Plus, and that he was also looking into being a SOC analyst.
Okay. So, Jose, you've given me great questions and given me a lot of information so I can help you. So when someone says they have a hard time finding a job, I want to talk about what employers need versus what people think they need. Now, you've done, and the security projects, we'll talk about that in a minute, but I call the Security Plus a pre-fundamental certification. And here's why I call it a pre-fundamentals. It's a nice intro to junior level security, and it tells you all the things that you're going to need to learn, but it doesn't teach them to you. So when I see a Security Plus, it's like, okay, now it's your time to start learning. You've done your pre-preparation. The AZ900, the Azure Fundamentals, again, that's not going to be enough for anything. So the good news is, Jose, you can still get any job you want, but let's talk about what you actually need. I actually consider the CISSP to be my favorite introduction to cybersecurity. In that, what I mean by after that, you probably have 30% of the knowledge you need to do to be effective, and you still have to learn the other 70%. The CCSP is about 20 to 30% of what you need for cloud security. And the CISM has about 10% of those elements you need for business. Now, when you look at security, let's talk about the security careers that actually exist that you can make some money in. And you can be a SOC analyst, but I'm going to tell you it's going to be the hardest job to get. It's going to be the lowest paid job that you can get. And you're going to have to fight harder to get this job. I mean, a lot harder than you actually would if you wanted to be a defensive engineer, an offensive engineer, or a security architect. And all these roles will pay more, with the security architect paying the least. I'll give you examples like Delroy Batt got his first job after our training as a security architect. And for example, first job as a security architect. I can't say where he is because he's at a top secret governmental agency. Quentin, I can say security architect, first tech job. Now, you said you want to be hands-on for sure. So that means you have to be in an engineering role because architects don't touch the tech. So that means you need to be an offensive role or a defensive role. So, I mean, if we start looking at what SOC analysts do, and I want to tell you why I recommend other jobs. One of the things they actually do is typically monitoring for security alerts. Now, the good news is right out there with our new really high-end security tools, we can send automated messages to people about these security alerts. So that is something that can be done by a machine. Now, when a security thing is detected, it needs to be responded to, right? Again, that's going to be done by a security engineer and not a SOC analyst. I just want you to understand why this is going to be one of the hardest jobs at the lowest paying and how you can still get hired. The next thing involved is incident investigation and management. So when it comes to an incident investigation, they're going to be the hands-on helpers that are going to be helping the engineers, the business people, etc. A lot of what SOC analysts do is review logs and analyze them. But guess what? AI can do that right now. And most of the security event monitoring systems can actually do that. So again, all these things are taken. Now, vulnerability management, yes, there is some that's done by a SOC analyst, but generally speaking, we're going to get ethical hackers or penetration testers or offensive engineers to try and break into our systems, which is going to give us a lot. They're typically involved in threat hunting, but a lot of these things can be somewhat automated. So, and a lot of documentation. So that's why this is going to be one of the harder roles. So since you said you wanted to be hands-on, and I don't recommend hands-on jobs, I recommend more management jobs for this reason. I just want you to think about it. And we've got some back-end clicking in the background on my team if anybody knows who that actually is. So you have to look at jobs which cannot be replaced by AI, like a security architect. So a security architect goes to a company, learns their business needs, learns their business challenges, learns their pain points. They meet with the executives, quantify the types of security risks they have. They learn that organization's business processes and security goals. They will meet with the legal team. They will meet, for example, with the compliance team. They will be determining the end-to-end security policy, the end-to-end encryption strategy, what the remote access systems need to look like, what the demilitarized systems need to look like, et cetera, et cetera. And Jose, all of that is done by the person, which means it cannot be replaced by AI. These security architect jobs, and most of the time for my clients, it's their first job, pay between $150,000 and $250,000, and they go up to about $500,000 or more. Now, if you want to be an engineer, not an architect, you have to understand that you run the risk of being replaced by AI. Now, we still need engineers, and I love engineers, so let's focus on what you need. If you told me that you did the CISSP, the CISM, and the CCSP, now I'd say you have most of your actual security fundamentals. That's 30 to 40% of what you need. Now, after that, to be what an employer needs, now we got to determine whether you're offensive or defensive. If you're an offensive security engineer where you're going to be breaking into systems, that means you need to get very good at social engineering or hacking people, because that's one of the things you're going to be doing. You're going to have to get very good at Kali Linux tools and hacking into systems. You're going to have to understand how to break into firewalls, break into IDS, IP systems, launch various types of attacks. Now, if you do that, and you're good at that, that is an offensive security person. There's also an OSCP certification that teaches a lot of that. There's a CEH master, which helps with that. So don't think the Security Plus is going to get you an interview. It probably won't. And those hands-on labs you're doing probably won't. So now, if you wanted to be a defensive security engineer, and then we'll talk about various labs you can do for this, is right. Here you're actually setting up the firewalls. And no, they're not going to be the firewalls in any Azure thing. They're going to be Cisco firewalls, Palo Alto firewalls, Fortinet firewalls, Checkpoint firewalls. You're going to be managing and setting up SIEM systems. You're going to be working with data loss prevention systems. You're going to be hardening operating systems and making an operating system plan, meaning which services do you remove from the operating systems? What kind of host-based IDS systems you put on these things? How are you locking these things down? It'll be Active Directory and users and roles for these defensive engineering roles. It'll be setting up the encryption and storage if it's totally appropriate. It's going to be for security engineers working with these systems, configuring data loss prevention systems, categorizing data. Again, you have to get the training in it. So again, Jose, you can do any of these jobs, and there's nothing that's going to stop you. You just have to learn the right skills. So a hands-on project might be buying a server, installing a hypervisor, setting up 10 different Windows and Linux systems if I wanted to be a penetration tester, and hacking into them. Setting up firewalls with EVE-NG, hacking through those firewalls. These are a real-world thing. So you can easily get a job in cybersecurity. You can easily get a job in cloud. But we have to define the exact role you want, and then we need to come up with a list of the exact skills you learn, and then there's there. Because just doing projects doesn't really help you. And the biggest thing that I've had so far is people do projects, but they don't know what the right projects are. And that's the secret. So we got to get you to focus. Is Jose, do you want to protect systems or do you want to break into systems? Let me know that. Then if you tell me what you want to do, then we can build you a focused plan. And I would be more than happy to do so. But a DevOps engineer is completely different than a cloud architect, who is different than an enterprise architect, who is different than a network architect. And that's the key. So you've scratched the surface of your pre-fundamentals so far. Now we need to build your fundamentals. Then we need to build your actual skills for your career. And you'll have any job you want, Jose. So don't get frustrated. You want a job in cloud? It'll be the same thing. We got to go find what you need and teach you. And these are all wonderful careers. My first job was a senior engineer. I was a lead architect within 3 months. I was a principal architect within 3 years. I can give you examples of lots of people that have done it. Pick the career you want, Jose, and we can help you. So come back, ask more questions. I'll do anything I can to help you. Mark, you have any comments here? Because Mark, I know you know a lot about security. You and our guys are working a lot on security training that we're giving out there for free.
Yeah, I'm always a little bit on the fence because I think about what would be best for your bottom line when it comes to your career. And then I know you always have that itch to scratch when it comes to something you enjoy. Borderline, I want to call it your passion. If I think about what's best for Jose, and again, based on this information, generally speaking, we'll ask a lot more questions. I would put it this way. Considering that the information that you have to learn to even become a SOC analyst is on par what you're anyway going to be learning and expanding upon as you become an architect, there's so much more upside when it comes towards the architect career than it is being in the engineering level. So from that perspective, I would say if one of your focuses is also to maximize your income, definitely go for the architect role, at least when it comes from the money side. And then, of course, if you're a little bit more extroverted, you enjoy talking to people, you like focusing a little bit more on what the actual problems is and how can you design a solution around it with peoples and processes, architect role, fantastic.
Yeah.
But then there's something to say about if you do truly enjoy the cat and mouse game. If you truly do enjoy that, you like being hands-on, trying to dissect different viruses and malwares and all that kind of things just to that you can protect your entity or your organization, who am I to tell you otherwise? If that's a passion of yours and you feel that you can do this day in and day out, guess what? You're still learning the same material as the architect, but I do want you to be aware of something here. It will take you a lot longer to become proficient at the engineering job because of the depth that you have to go into it. Now, you'll skip a lot of the business side of things, right? You're not going to be sitting there. You're not going to try to figure out what is the business driver so that I can pack it to a solution. That in itself is a very fun role in itself. So you'll miss out on that. But if you like to get your hands dirty, you like to get nitty gritty, Mike and I, we always like to call it, you like to get geeky, who am I to tell you otherwise?
Yep.
But make a decision early enough because it will influence the trajectory that you will have in the future.
Yes.
So that's why I bring up generally money, because the money thing is for people a lot easier to visualize or conceptualize compared to will I find fulfillment in the job? Because sometimes you do have to see, okay, what am I enjoying a little bit more, and you kind of have to try it out. So you need a little appetizer sometimes to figure that out. But give it some thought, Jose.
Yeah.
See what appeals to you. I can only tell you from my perspective, from Mike's, I don't like having a ceiling on my career. I like to be able to have the flexibility so that I can make the decision if I want to progress. I don't want somebody else holding me down just because, engineering isn't sexy, so to say, for many people, or they consider it a lesser role for whatever it may be. So I know what it would be for me. Mike's done it. I mean, that's no secret. We're pushing over 25 years on, being an expert in that. But yeah, think about it, definitely. That would be my thought.
And here's the key. It doesn't matter what you used to do. My first job was internal medicine. I'm a nurse practitioner. I practiced internal medicine. Prior to that, I had a tactical job. And then one day I woke up and said, I want to be a network engineer. I was hired as a senior engineer. 6 months later, I was a principal architect. 9 months later, I passed the CCIE. And that's when my career, I realized how much I didn't know. And then I got to start learning for the next 25 years. All right, let's go to the next one, Jose. And if you've got more questions, please pop them. We'd love to help you.
So this is from Drifting Tangerine. I have over 10 years of experience as a DevOps engineer with an AWS solution architect professional, as well as an Azure I keep saying security now, sorry, it's on my mind. Solution architect expert and Google professional architect certification. My company doesn't view me as an architect. Why?
Okay, Drifting Tangerine, we hear this every day. We see this every day, and we retrain DevOps engineers and cloud engineers to be architects every day. Here's what's going on here. You're confusing any type of engineering with architecture. So what you're talking about, and I love DevOps engineers, and my architecture team, I bring some. I'm talking about a hands-on building professional and automation professional. Now let's talk about the difference between that and an architect. So they're not going to see you as an architect. And let's think about what DevOps people really do. So they're trying to hybridize engineering, software engineering, and software operations. And architecture is the planning, which is the exact opposite. So you typically see a DevOps engineer that's kind of trying to bridge the gap between the developers, and they're going to be involved in automation, continuous integration, continuous delivery pipelines, infrastructure as code, monitoring systems, providing feedback on the systems, version control, all of that. So that's your DevOps engineer. And we're so lucky to have them. Now, here's what you do as an architect: plan. The architect is not a hands-on job. So here's what you would typically do as an architect. First thing you would do is you would go to your client's site and you'd meet the client's executives and you ask them, what is the goal for your business? Where do you want your business to be now, 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and 20 years from now? And we have to get and understand that. Now, the next thing we architects have to do is evaluate the organization's business processes. So what does that look like? What's the org chart look like? How is the product manufactured, if the product or service exists? What's the supply chain look like, and how does that supply chain work along the way? How is that product sold or service sold? How is that product supported? Which departments have to touch the product along the way? So we need to understand the way the business operates. And then after we understand the way the business operates, we have to work with that client and say, okay, these are your business goals. These are the alterations you need to have in your business processes to be successful. And then after we come up with the optimal future business processes that we desire, the next thing we need to do is go build a team of 15 to 50 people to go into that client and actually learn that client's system. So let's say I'm planning a cloud migration for an enterprise. I'm going to need to go there. I'm going to bring in some network engineers. I'm going to bring in some security engineers. I'm going to bring in some IAM engineers. I'm going to bring in some DevOps architects, some DevOps engineers, some software engineers, some application architects, some AI architects, some big data scientists, all of it. It's going to be a team of 15 to 50 people, and we're going to go then baseline that client's technology. And then we're going to take notes of it. Then with that architecture team, I'm going to say, okay, now, here's where the customer wants to go. These are our optimal business processes, and here's the current technology stack that we have. So the next thing we're going to have to do is I'm going to have to lead that architecture team to design a plan to help that customer with their new workflows. And then figure out what that plan is. So now I know where I'm at and where I want to go. This is called the as-is versus the to-be architecture. Now we got to create a gap analysis between what we have and where we need to go. And we need to figure out whatever technologies and people or processes that are going to be necessary to get that done. Then we need to evaluate that organization's capability for change. Do they have the sophistication for this new technology? What have you? What would be the process for change control? What kind of governance plans do we need to implement for this client to make sure it's done? And then we create our architecture based on that after we answer these questions. And when we're creating our architecture, we're not selecting the best technology. What we're doing is evaluating every possible technology option we have and looking at whatever the trade-offs are, because this piece of tech will improve this but hurt this. This piece of tech will hurt this and improve this. And we have to do that for the hundreds of thousands of different technology things we have. How many different technology vendors in a real enterprise? 200 to 1,000 applications. Networks that could have 50,000 users, 5 to 10,000 routes in the routing table, thousands of wide area network connections. So this is going to take a whole lot of time to go plan this and then figure this out. Now, after we finally deal with this, we cloud architects are going to lead the documentation. That means an executive summary document that's 2 pages is typically a technical document that's about 200 pages with pictures and information that the entire team did, as well as documents. Now we're going to take this document, we're going to go back to the client, we're going to present it to key stakeholders. The key stakeholders are going to say, nix that, do this, nix that, do this, and then we're going to redesign that architecture based upon that. Now, when we finally have an architecture, we're going to go with the sales team and sell that to the client. We're going to negotiate the deal. And as soon as it's time to build the architecture, we're off on a new client. And a team of cloud engineers and DevOps engineers do the building. So, Drifting Tangerine, what you told me is you're an expert at building. Awesome. But now you want to be an expert and designer. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to learn architecture, because knowing how to build teaches you nothing on how to design. I mean, I wish it would. And this is the mistake most people do in their careers, that they do hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of hands-on engineering projects, and they wonder why nobody sees them as an architect. So what happens is they go on an interview, they fail the interview, and they get told, come back when you have more experience. Come back when you have more experience means you failed the interview, and it's being polite. They wouldn't have interviewed you if they're there. So this is the key and the way to think of it. So it's no big deal. Now, the reason nobody asked the people that design shopping malls to build them, or the people that build them not to design a shopping mall, is building doesn't teach you architecture, which is planning. That's why if you want a Golden Gate Bridge, you hire an architect. Now, you want a team of people to build it, you need an engineer. Again, it's a completely different set of skills. So that's no big deal. So the key is to do this. And we've done it again and again and again. Sweetha was one of the first DevOps engineers we trained. She had about a decade in there. She came to us. Poof, we got her there. I'm trying to think of there was another person in Miami. We've trained lots of DevOps engineers. So the point is, it's easy for you to do. You just have to realize that your last job won't teach you your new job. No differently, when my last job taught me internal medicine, I went into networking, I had to learn networking. So be thankful you got a lot of valuable skills and a lot of valuable knowledge. Great. And that will help you along the way, but now you got to learn architecture. Join us in the How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar this week. We'll talk about every step we do. And maybe if more people ask about architecture questions, I'll give you some information on some of the stuff we actually do and some of the things we actually do. And depending upon the number of questions we have, I got a list of about 50 things that I put together on what we actually do. I'll give you a couple right now, and then we'll go to the next question. So we typically create technology roadmaps to align with business objectives. We analyze the current technology systems. We'll look for key areas of improvement in IT processes and systems. We'll be designing the future state architectures. We'll be designing IT governance policies and procedures. Our focus is aligning IT initiatives with the business strategy. We'll be conducting a gap analysis between current architectures and target architectures. We'll oversee systems integration. We'll develop and enforce standards and best practices. We'll lead architecture review boards. We'll facilitate communication between business units. Cost-benefit analysis is SWOT analysis. I could go on. So these are more MBA type skills in the architect job than engineering. And I kind of hope that helps. Mark, if you want to add any context to that.
Yeah, I just briefly wanted to touch on the part where it says my company doesn't view me as an architect. There is definitely ways to reframe how people view you, but I do want to preface it with this. The culture within a company has to fit.
Yes.
If the culture within a company is not right, meaning they don't view internal promotions as something that is commonplace.
Yep.
And what I've also seen happen from time to time is that this also extends within different departments. So if you're in an engineering department, many times the higher up departments may just not want to play nice with you. And this comes all back to culture. But let's say you do have a culture in place with a company that likes this promotion from within and doesn't mind seeing somebody grow from nothing into something higher up. What you will have to do is take some time out of your day. Again, this can't be on your employer's dime. Take it out of your day and volunteer with those people that are in the positions that you want. So let's assume they have these architect positions. And over time, what's going to happen is you're going to start to disassociate yourself from this old kind of image that they had of you because you're running with a different crowd now.
Mm-hmm.
That image, their rapport, is slowly going to rub off on you. And also what's going to happen is there's a distinction between the speech an engineer uses and the speech that an architect uses. You'll hear a lot of the architects, they have more of a, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong with this, but I would say probably they have a little bit more sales in them. They're a little bit more of a sales individual, not necessarily technical sales, but it's part of them. They kind of have detached themselves more from the actual building aspect of a technology. And their focus has shifted to, correct? So it's more salesy. You agree with that?
Yeah. In fact, what I did, I worked for a company that was a little questionable about leaving these technical positions to a business position. And here's what I did. I bought a bunch of Armani suits and went from my t-shirt to an Armani suit. Every time there was an opportunity to get hands-on, that's not really my strength. But, I know this consulting engineer that's great at that. Why don't I build a team and lead the team and make sure we drive this? Mike, there's a proof of concept. Great. Let me build an engineering team and they'll do it. Does anybody want to give a presentation at this conference? Yeah, I want to do this presentation at the conference. In fact, I did this and it got really bad. I was actually leading the most strategic voice deal in the entire company with 80,000 employees. And they were trying to find a way to make the bank's voice fail inside of less than 50 milliseconds. So out of nowhere, I'm in a room with all these super smart engineers and I'm trying not to pretend that I don't know so they can see me as an architect. I'm like, oh, it's very simple. We'll just swap out this. We already have an OSPF backbone. We'll make it single area. We'll do some RSVP signaling. We'll turn on label distribution protocol, and we'll create a primary and backup explicit path. They'll have a dial tone in less than 40 milliseconds around the failure. And something scary happened. My manager said, ooh, Mike, who's been trying so hard to lose this engineering thing, knows about tech. Mike, you want to get involved in the build? And I'm like, no. And he's like, okay, well, because he realized how hard I was working.
Should have just said, I have carpal tunnel. I can't do it now.
Yeah, there you go.
But there are different ways that you can reframe the way people view you. It could be there's a saying that says, dress not for the job you have, but dress for the job that you want.
Yes.
Right. And there's this meme out there. It's kind of edged in my mind. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but the person went from just t-shirt, couple of jeans, and they started wearing a Batman suit. Okay. So that was the joke on it, but that's what they were dressing for going in the office. But there are simple things that you can do to change that. And one thing I do want to stress too, if you went about it the right way and you don't see change, don't feel that you're stuck there.
No.
Remember, this is your life, your career. So there's going to be other people out there who are going to want somebody that's a go-getter like yourself. Mike and I, we always discuss this. It's not always about your technical prowess or particular skills, because skills are exactly that. They can be taught. There's something that you can gain if you spend the time and the effort and resources in doing so. But to find somebody who's motivated, somebody who doesn't bring down the team, meaning they're negative Nelly, so to say, those are skills that are not easily taught. Those are something that comes from within you. If you're a person like that and you're teachable, oh my goodness, people will scoop you up left, right, and center. There's no question about it. So don't ever feel like you're stuck. So, yeah. All right, let's go on to the next question then. And this one is from Cloud Doctor. And it is, I interviewed for a solutions architect role at a consulting company, but it was a non-technical and I didn't do well. With 20 years as a system administrator, how can I succeed next time around?
Okay, so Cloud Doctor, I've always loved systems administrators because, they learn how to do a lot of different things. I also think it's one of the hardest careers to get actually out of. So here's the thing. If you're an architect, let's think about what we're really doing. We're aligning an organization's people, processes, and technology. They're Michael Porter's typical forces of business, but I want you to think about that. People, processes, and technology. What that should mean to you is 2/3 of this has nothing to do about the tech. So, I started to talk about some things that we actually do. So let me talk about some more things we do as an architect. So we're basically breaking down the silos of communication between business units. We're looking at how that organization could potentially use data in the future. We're designing scalable and flexible systems, which are going to be in 98% of cases across multiple clouds and data centers. We're going to have to be looking for what are the appropriate technology platforms that we should use. We're going to be managing vendor relationships. We're going to be managing stakeholders. We're going to be looking at business continuity plans and calculating the cost of downtime, for example, and helping that organization determine maximum tolerable downtime. We're going to be working with that organization and its compliance people, which are usually attorneys, to determine is that organization going to be in compliance with anything that's necessary. And tell me if this is the way any of these questions went down the path. We may be involved in leading teams that are going to do technology audits. We're going to be participating in strategic planning sessions We're going to be looking at cloud migration plans, which is basically not only, should we go to the cloud? If so, which clouds we should use, how many clouds we should use, the type of cloud strategy, if it even is a cloud strategy, or if it's a hybrid cloud strategy or a hybrid multi-cloud strategy. We may develop reference architectures for various business units and their needs and or minimum standards, for example, of things. We're going to be doing architecture maturity assessments and capability assessments of that business. We'll facilitate a lot of knowledge sharing and give a lot of presentations. We're going to have to optimize our application portfolios because the average enterprise has 200 to 1,000 different applications. So we're going to have to be working with those key business leaders and finding out what they're using them and why they're using for them and creating a cohesive strategy to minimize those number of applications and maximize what they get out of them. So we don't have disconnected systems that don't talk to each other, which hurt the business. We're going to be looking at enterprise-wide security things. And again, that's people and processes. That's everything from anti-malware, anti-phishing education to training campaigns, to demilitarized zone designs, to security policy. No, none of these things ever involve touching your hands. We might be looking at data quality and determining quality planning and leading data people to determine what we're going to need in the future. We may be developing a strategy for that organization's mobile workforce as well as their digital strategy. We're going to be making sure that the IT systems support business needs, business availability, business performance. We're going to be looking at enterprise application integration patterns, and we'll be looking at health checks and systems. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to give presentations, manage stakeholders. So I expect the majority of the interview will be non-technical. In fact, I'm going to ask Mark a specific question, 1 or 2 tech questions, and I'm going to show what it's going to look like in a real interview. Mark, I'm going to pick a question that any competent network architect should be able to answer. Mark, I'd like an answer in 90 seconds or less so we can show what the rest of this architect is going to be. Mark, I've got 2 connections to either connections to a cloud provider or 2 connections to an internet service provider. I have 2 discrete internet service providers. I would like to load share across these without getting out of order packets. What are my options? That's the one technical question I'll probably ask Mark.
Well, since we're talking about external connections from your actual organization, the only choice we're going to have is using the Border Gateway Protocol. And with the Border Gateway Protocol, we have attributes or characteristics of those particular advertised routes that we can manipulate so that we can make sure that we're properly load balancing across the various links we have.
Okay. Could you give me certain attributes that we might be able to use to tune, for example? Certain options?
Yes. So, sure. So if we're looking to tune it for traffic leaving our systems, our entity, we could work on using the weight preference. That is assuming that you have Cisco. Most people do have some Cisco, some variety of it, especially when we're dealing with cloud providers. Amazon does recognize that particular attribute or characteristic. So that's an option. And then, of course, something that is more of a standardized option that we can use is just defining what our local exit is going to be based on a criteria very similar to weight. But this is acceptable to any standard that you may have, anything from Arista to Juniper or any type of those type of vendors that you have. Or even if you have something as simple as a Linux box that runs some type of routing protocol, you can do that as well.
Okay, so now I know that Mark's competent. I know he knows something. So the next thing, Mark, and don't answer this now. Mark, talk to me about the last time you did a presentation in front of a board. Mark, what does it take to build an architecture team in your experience? Mark, you need you need 50 people in your architecture team for the next 12 months. What do you have to do inside of your organization to get those resources? Mark, could you talk about what it takes to go manage stakeholders? So all I need to do is instantly understand that Mark understands the technology. And then I can't ask any more technical questions because his job is not technical. It's not hands-on. It's funny, David Lithincum, somebody asked him recently in class, or was either in class or one of the things, and then he says, it's not a very technical role. The architect role is not like an engineer role. You won't code, you won't configure, you won't do DevOps, you won't do SysOps, you won't be updating an operating system, SSHing into anything, remote desktoping into anything. It's not our job. That's all the relegation of engineering. So Cloud Doctor, learn architecture. Why don't you join us on Thursday For our How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar, we will talk about everything we use. And it won't be a hard thing to get you hired. Once you have the right set of skills, you just need the right set of skills. I mean, I'm thinking about Jermaine Houston, who was selling landscaping gear, but his first job was an enterprise architect after we trained him. Or Jennifer Ema, the mental health tech, who was hired by JP Morgan Chase as a cloud architect as soon as she graduated our program. Or Lenny Burnett, our video editor. Again, Poof got hired by Citrix as a solution architect. Or Jeffrey West, the geologist, doing some kind of cool geospatial imaging. I have no idea what it was, but it sounded cool. But it had nothing related to network data center or cloud. And when he was done, he got hired as a solution architect by Kalian. Or Amaranth, who was working at a bank whose first job was a solution architect. So you can easily do this. Easily. You just got to learn the right skills. And it's not a tech job. It's a business job with some tech. You can remember that and you're going to be in good shape.
Yeah, we have this adage when it comes to the tech as an architect. It's a mile wide and inch deep. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to know little about everything. But something that is important is let me rephrase. As an engineer, your first instinct is to go deep with your answers.
Yeah.
Architect is the opposite. You want to go as shallow as possible because you want to be in the mode of asking follow-up questions to gather more information. That's one of those key roles as an architect. We need information so that we can make an informed decision. Without information, there is no point of trying to even mention a solution or something that could happen, because how am I going to make an assumption that you need this if I have no idea what your problems are? Yeah. Right? That's why Mike mentions very often this example of a doctor. A doctor wouldn't be very good if you walked in the room, looks at you, and he immediately gave you a diagnosis without asking you any questions. It's the same idea here. As an architect, you're diagnosing something. And that generally means you're not in selling mode immediately. You're in what we call a discovery mode. You're trying to gather information. Mm-hmm. So when you do that also on your interviews, especially the non-technical ones, it's the same idea. Gather information in regards to how you can eventually apply your skills towards. Without that, there is no point. You're basically just going to be throwing things at the wall and hope they stick. And then in the end, you're going to wonder, why didn't I get the job? So just a little tip to that.
Yeah.
All right, let's go on to the next question, please. And that's going to be from Christian Ocampo. What's the roadmap for AWS Security Certificate Specialty?
Okay, Christian, I'm going to be honest here, and Mark's going to be honest with you here. Here's the good of the AWS Security Specialty. It teaches you some of the names of some AWS services, which you probably can't use in reality. And I'll talk about why you can't. And it teaches you how to configure them. Okay, so Christian, let me just briefly introduce why we won't be using any AWS security services for the most part in reality. Let's say we choose AWS WAF. It is a very nice layer 7 firewall in that it will allow your incoming traffic, your traffic from the inside to go out to the internet, and its return traffic to come back. It will even look at the application layer and look if things are supposed to be what they're at. And if you go deal with a third party, if an attack occurs that's occurred somewhere else in history with the exact signature pattern, it might be able to block it. Okay, that sounds good. And quite frankly, that was really good in 2000, maybe even 2005. Now, Christian, let's compare that to a modern next generation firewall. Like the AWS WAF, it will allow your internal traffic to go out to the internet and its return traffic coming back. Like the AWS WAF, it'll look at layer 7 and inspect things. Now, in addition to that, if you wanted to create remote access users for your people, you could actually do that with this. But here's the big difference, Christian. My next generation firewall from Check Point, Palo Alto, Cisco, Fortinet, here's what it's doing. It's constantly like a soldier looking around, scanning. What's going on? And then Mark tries to hack me. And all of a sudden the firewall says, this doesn't feel right. This pattern of behavior doesn't feel right. Let me block it until proven otherwise and ask the systems administrators what you want me to do. Or in next generation firewall, I email Mark and the firewall says, oh, there's a virus in this and strips out the bad code. Or I try to ship code. Some next generation firewalls will spin up a virtual machine. They'll test that code in the virtual machine and they'll tell you whether it's safe or not. So I could use AWS WAF, which I can't, which I won't, because in most cases it's not secure enough for enterprise needs, or I could just go outside there. Now I need an intrusion detection, intrusion prevention system. Am I going to use what's at AWS Macie? Of course not. I'm going to use something that's big, that sticks on my network, that I can stick in all three clouds, because 98% of enterprises have more than one cloud. So the AWS Security Special teaches you how to use AWS Cloud proprietary security tools. Now, in a multi-cloud environment, I can't use them. So it mitigates the need in 98% of all cases, anything there. The next problem with the AWS Security Specialty is there's no security. So Mark and I were well-meaning. We wanted to teach an AWS security course. We put together a whole course. And then Mark and I had a really long conversation, and it had no cybersecurity information in it, almost anything. It was less than the pre-fundamentals of the Security Plus. And we said, we can't teach this. So my recommendation is that you get some real cybersecurity certifications where you're going to learn something. And they are the CISSP, which is my overall favorite security certifications. You get that, and it might be 20% of the knowledge you need for a career. The CCSP, which is a specific cloud security certification, which I love, and you can join us completely free. And that will actually teach you actual cybersecurity for the cloud. And guess what? It'll work on AWS, Azure, Google, Cisco, Dell's cloud, Alibaba's cloud, the Nutanix cloud, and the OpenStack cloud. So again, it's there. Again, it's giving you something good. And the CISM will give you the management perspective. Now, if I wanted to be an ethical hacker, that's where I start looking at that OSCP and the CEH Master, not the standard CEH. The CEH Master is a security test with an exam where you have to prove you can hack. So the roadmap for the AWS Security Specialty, Christian, is generally, I don't recommend it. And if you're going to do it, make sure you have a CISSP or a CCSP if you want to work in the cloud. And if you don't want to work in the cloud, get a CISSP. And then you can always get this thing after the fact, and it's kind of like a little rubber stamp. But I want you to see, Christian, how little this actually means. So imagine a physician's resume, and they said, I can type. That's the equivalent of this certification. It's very junior. It's very intro level. You can do it in a weekend, which is good. And honestly, I have no problem if you've got a certified solutions architect professional and a CISSP and you want to get the certification, the AWS Security Specialty. Beautiful. Because I'd rather see you have the TOGAF, the AWS Solutions Architect Professional, and the CISSP, or a CCIE Security and a CISSP. But I generally don't recommend the AWS Security Specialty. Who knows? Maybe one day I'll run a free boot camp for it. And if we were to do it, we'd have to run actual cybersecurity boot camp first and then say, here's the AWS stuff. But realize 98% of the world is multi-cloud, which means we can't use any proprietary tools. We have to use more industrial tool sets. Realize we're going to need different identity platforms in the enterprise. We're going to need really robust SIEM systems, really robust data loss prevention systems. And this tooling has to work across all of our clouds. So that pretty much is going to mitigate 95% of what's actually taught in the AWS Security Specialty. And that's the difference between a certification and real world. Certification is the name of a service and how to configure it. AWS certifications are technician certifications, the name of a service and how to configure it. The careers we're talking about are either engineering careers, which are more about your deep knowledge of the technology and your ability to performance tune it, or they're architecture careers, which is how do you help that business through the leveraging technology tools? And this test kind of fits into that technician world. So, Mark, you actually looked at the curriculum. You actually read the official documentation. You read the official books on it, plus what we put together, and you actually said, hold this and don't teach this. So, Mark, I'll let you talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm first going to address directly the question, and then I'm going to give you my 2 cents on it. So you asked, what's the roadmap for gaining the AWS Security Certificate Specialty? I'm going to make an assumption now. I don't like to make assumptions, but I'm going to make it now just for this scenario. I'm going to assume you know some security. I don't have to teach you encryption. You know what the different frameworks are. You're very familiar with the roles of firewalls and the different prevention, intrusion, breach detection systems. You know all that stuff. Let's assume you do. Then the roadmap is going to be a bumpy and a swervy one. Number one, exactly as the title says, it's AWS based. So you're going to have to know the products that AWS or Amazon is actually leasing out or renting to their customers. For that, the best way to go is start off with the solution architect certification that teaches you some of the basics of the actual different products that Amazon offers. Then you transition into the professional one. The reason is the security certification is a specialty certification. It's going to deal on how do I securely implement each and every facets of these different products that Amazon offers. So they're also going to make an assumption. You already know about security. You already know about the products. We're not here to teach you them. Now we're just teaching you how do you click this button to accomplish a certain task. So that will be your roadmap. Knock out the associate, knock out the professional, and then go for the actual security. Some might even argue that it would be in your best interest to even knock out the advanced networking one, because networking is at the infrastructure level. So without networking, without the plumbing itself, nothing is going to work either. So some may argue with this. Now, with that out of the way, I would probably tell you, if you're truly interested in security, and I mean not building the security appliances or building the actual policies and implementing them, then you go for a vendor agnostic or vendor neutral training solution. And that's where the ISC square comes into it. You know, we have the CISSP, you got the CCSP, the CISM, as Mike mentioned, that's a little bit managerial. All of them teach you a holistic approach of security, so that if you ever wanted to get into the implementation game, which you won't after doing any of them, at least you'll understand what the technology is, and more importantly, why do we use it? If you don't understand the why you're going to use it, there's no point in implementing it, and there's no point in even knowing it. What's the point if there's no purpose after it? And as a little bonus, there's also one called the System Security Certified Practitioner, which is also an ISC square. That is a little bit more of a hands-on certification if you want to go that way. That's also going to serve you a whole lot better than just going immediately for the AWS security. So that would be my take on it, just because of how little actual focus is on teaching security within that certification. You would have to get some training that's going to train you to certification, and then everything else with it. Then it might be worth it. But then again, me and Mike, we have this conversation. Opportunity cost. If I take the AWS security certification compared to a CISSP, compared to a CCSP, which is going to have more of an impact, both when it comes to my income and also the way I can get that income, and that's through interviews and getting the job. Which is going to have more of an impact? I know what my answer would be. I know for a fact what Mike's answer is going to be, but you're going to have to convince yourself that the other ones, the CISSP and the CCSP, are going to have a much more dramatic impact on your career, both from an income potential, but also from a knowledge, being that subject matter expert, compared to what you will get from a cloud-specific security certification. And that's one of the reasons why we actually moved away from it after we sat down and reviewed it together. We said, listen, this won't serve our students well, and it won't serve the general public as well, who we're going to be extending that to.
Yeah.
Great question, Christian, though. And the next question is from Dingelman. He says, hey, Mike, I was temporarily displaced due to flooding, but I'm getting back into my training. When it comes to getting 3 areas of expertise in security, what would you suggest?
Okay, Dingelman, I know you. I would recommend getting 1 expertise in security, not 3. If you try to become an expert on 3 different things, you will not be an expert on anything. And that's why when we train a physician, you know, an internal medicine physician does...
Mike,
yes.
I want to interrupt here. He's probably confusing your know 3 things really well going into an interview. Like that, you give advice about knowing 3 things really well that you can talk about going into an interview. In the past, okay, so you've given that recommendation.
Yeah. So let me talk about that versus the question, and I'll do both. Thanks, Chris, in the background.
Yeah. Sorry, I just I was like, I've heard this before, but it's not expertise. It's just knowing things really well.
So
areas
let's talk
of expertise
about the 2 things. So when you're on an interview, and I'm going to ask someone about an interview, I'm going to ask them questions. You can't know everything. So if Mark were to ask me how to write a Python script, for example, I'd say, Mark, in the last 25 years as an architect, I've never done anything with Python or any application coding because my job has been involved in digital transformation. For some reason, your architects wanted to learn Python. I'd do what it takes. I'd stay up all night, read 1,000 pages a day, do 1,000 hours of labs until I was the best Python person on your team. But if you want to talk to me about what I'm good at, let's talk about not delivering 99.999% available network architectures, driving transformation with a positive return on investment capital for the clients, delivering in general 200 to 300% return on investment capital, and leading large architecture teams and digital transformation projects for the world's largest organizations. And that way I point to the three things that can guide the conversation on an interview. Now, if I was a security architect, what things would I really, what things would I point myself to? I might say my expertise lies in creating an end-to-end security strategy and be able to talk about that, what goes into end-to-end security strategy. I might also talk about, depending upon what I knew and didn't know well, how to provide a high security environment across distributed computing platforms like 2 to 3 clouds plus a data center. Might talk about that. I might talk about, in my case, I might talk about my expertise in demilitarized zone design and network security, because that is my background. Now, mind you, any one of those things you could spend the next 25 years on and truly become an expert on. So what should you know? Multi-cloud security, Dingleman, because that's reality in today's world. If my goal was architecture, a lot of mine would be in the business planning related world and the security planning related world. Because remember, you're an architect, not an engineer. How do I plan? How do I quantify that organization's security risk? Key. So I can show that organization what their security risk is. And now once I quantified it, how do I build the business case on showing them that my solution will deliver more value than its cost? There's that. And that means the end-to-end design. So that means you leading a team, understanding the people that are doing the security, understanding the breaking into the systems, the penetration, the vulnerability management, the threat detection. It's an understanding and knowledge of all of those systems that get tied into their cohesive strategy. Again, it could be something like that. But it's got to be based on something you want to be good at, or what do you want to do? So Dingleman, what do you want to do? It really doesn't matter what they are. I mean, it could be AI and its impact in security and how to leverage AI to enhance your security systems. That'd be a specialty I'd probably pick right now, because that's going to be something where there's a lot of work there. But if you're going to be AI and security, where are you going to work? Cisco, IBM, Checkpoint, Fortinet, Palo Alto, Cisco, maybe Deloitte, Accenture, KPMG, Capgemini. You're not going to, because that's where they're going to put you into a role like that. If you did a different kind of role where it's AI and security, it wouldn't be as needed, because in most cases these organizations are separate, not that they should be. So you have to figure out where you want to work and then get your specialty. So Dingleman, where do you want to work? What exactly do you want to do? Because without it, I'm the same doctor that's recommending surgery for every single patient without knowing their needs. And I do know you, Dingleman. And I know you, we worked with you, got a great security engineering job at one of the best tech companies in the world. Potentially the best tech company in the world in today's world, and one of the most valuable companies in the world. But where do you want to go from there? What's your next job? That would be where I would determine what I would suggest doing. Because it could be different. Mark's 3 things are different than my 3 things. I just need you to have 3 things on an interview. But if you're related to specializing, pick 1, not 3.
Yeah, and it comes down to how you want to pick them too. Some people are going to pick them based on what they find interesting. Others may go down the more logical road, if you want to call it that way, and they're going to look and do some reconnaissance in the market, see what is of interest or what a lot of people say they're lacking. Remember, you're a problem solver, right? So you want to know what the problems is so that you can apply your skill set to that problem. So they're gonna pick these domains based on where they can have the biggest impact and also make the most money, right? So that's where Mike mentioned something as artificial intelligence. Yeah. For myself, and I'm thinking what is pretty big out there, I'm talking about governance and compliance. That's always going to be big, especially if we're talking about a multinational company, right? The laws and the governments are going to be different, let's say in the United Kingdom compared to United States, same with Germany and the EU in general. So that might be one of the things. And then the other ones you pick. I know I'm a little bit more predisposed to infrastructure because I believe infrastructure should be secured. I would focus less on the physical because general physical is, what are you going to do? You're not going to put soldiers out there. That's somebody else already most likely has taken care of, but more of the actual less tangible items. But those would be my three that I would pick, and they're different than what Mike would pick. So again, figure out the reasons why you want to pick one over the other.
Yeah, and the key, when I transitioned into tech from medicine, there were two things that I really loved. One was networks and connecting people, and the other was building servers and workstations. In fact, when I was in college, I had a side business building PCs. I was selling them to students, selling them to professors, selling them to the university, and I loved it. And then I did the analysis before I focused my time, and I said, okay, which is going to be more strategic? PC, server building, and server administration. And I saw that at that time, everybody was learning at that. I'm like, this is the wrong place in the supply and demand curve. And then I said networking. And then when I looked at networking, I figured the internet's going to be built out and somebody needs somebody to design the next phase of the internet, which was me. And I've worked with internet service providers to design their networks and go build it out. And I was like, this networking thing's going to be good. Then I looked around and said, who's willing to go do a CCIE? And at the time, there was about 6,000 people that passed the exam. And I was like, that's going to be my fundamentals, my intro level exam. If only 6,000 people out of millions tried to take it and pass it and they all failed, this is what I got to do. So I did that because huge need, no supply, which meant good pay. And that enabled me to retire in my early 30s. Then I stayed retired. And while I was retired, I was getting people hired everywhere. And then I saw the kind of horrible training that existed out there in the cloud space. And I felt obligated to come out of retirement. So there's that. But you can pick on the future strategy, which is good. You can pick on your love, which is good. My perspective is to find what you love and then look at the supply and demand curves and the future of that and then make the best decision based upon that. And that's why in today's world, I recommend architecture careers because nothing can compete with the pay. Nothing can compete with the number of openings that are out there. And quite frankly, where AI will be competitive with engineers, it can't be competitive with architects. So that's why I stopped selling engineering training and only architecture training and closed our engineering programs because I didn't want to sell it. Not that I don't love engineers, I love them. But I was very, very worried about charging people to train them for a career and them not have a good long-term career option. Because first, I never want to take people's pay and not get them results. And secondly, I'm not concerned about somebody's ability to get a job a year from now. I'm concerned about where do they go 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And we schedule our training accordingly. I'm not looking to get somebody a junior job. I'm looking to build somebody a career where they can start at 150 and go to $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year years later. And that's what it takes, the analysis and the strategy. But we got to do what we love. And quite frankly, had I not hurt myself, I was a paramedic firefighter paying my way through school, and I loved that job more than anything. Then I was an ER nurse. I hated it. Then I was a nurse practitioner. I liked it, practicing internal medicine. And then I found networking, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me, except for marrying my wife.
I like how you put it in.
And maybe
so for you, it was a
like
combination, right? You did a reverse engineering. You figured out what was in demand, what skills were needed, and you also coupled it with your ambition to want to be the best that you can at doing something. So everybody's why, I suppose, if you want to call it, is going to be a little bit different. Again, I'm also not ever going to shame somebody that says, you know what, I love being a high school teacher. Let's just say I want to be a high school teacher.
It's great.
I mean, no secret that they're not millionaires, let's be honest. But they love that aspect of teaching others, helping them gain information. How could I ever tell them, don't do that job? It may not make you a millionaire in the short term, but it fulfills you. Same goes with this. Some will go after the money, others will go after the passion. Neither is wrong. Pick one, stick to it, execute it. And that's how we also tell our students. We want you to get these high-paying jobs because you deserve it. You've put in the time, efforts, blood, sweat, and tears. But at the end of the day, if you're that geeky, like we like to say, you like to be hands-on, you know what? Try to marry both of them. Try to marry that fantastic trainee you got with your passion and go make a name for yourself. Go make an impact. There's always going to be impact. Doesn't have to be globally, but you will make an impact on the people that you interact with. Either if they're going to be students, either if they're going to be coworkers, or perhaps if you're working with customers, even the customers. Okay, let's go on to the next question, and it is from Carlos. He's saying, I'm in early stages of your program with 9+ years in e-commerce experience. I'm considering specializing in this industry for a cloud/solution architect role. Any key things to know about e-commerce architecture?
Yes, Carlos. First, e-commerce is not going to be something you want to focus on. Now, you can focus on an industry like retail, like a global retailer. You can focus on consumer product goods. You can focus on healthcare. You can focus on, say, oil. But e-commerce is just a subset of commerce. So, Carlos, when we think about business, specifically e-commerce, which is traditionally retail, they're probably going to have brick and mortar, and they're going to have a lot of initiatives other than just the e-commerce. So if we limit our focus to e-commerce, you can't be an architect. And that's the key. As an architect, you're focusing on optimizing that client's entire business, not e-commerce. So if we have a global retailer, what does that mean? What do we need to do to mobilize their sales reps and give them the tools that they actually have? What does that business have in terms of data from its physical and its online locations that can help them better learn the customer? What does that organization's supply chain need to look like to stock its e-commerce warehouses and its retail stores? What are those organizations' competitors? And what is it that you can do to provide a strategic advantage somewhere? Now, the customers of that retailer, what are they telling that retailer? What is that retailer's pain points and strategies, for example? And if so, what can your architecture do about it? So figure out the industry and learn the industry, but not a subset of that industry. So focusing on retail commerce, consumer product, and that's the key. So, Carlos, I've done generic architecture and I've done specific industry architecture, and I'll tell you the difference. Early in my career, I was designing systems for internet service providers. You know what I knew when I started about internet service providers? Nothing. I had a CCIE and I thought I knew something until I realized how little I actually knew. Then I started learning the internet service provider business and learning how they made money and learning where their pain points were. And then I was able to design a system for internet service providers. Was that the best use of my time? No. I was a principal architect there and I was 80% technical, 20% business. It was in my youth. Now, after that, I ended up designing systems for banks. Now, the good news is I had an MBA with a finance degree, so I knew something about the banking industry. I had already worked on Wall Street, so again, I knew more about the banking industry, and I was able to provide good architecture for these banks. Good. Now, after that, Cisco had a Internet Business Solutions group. Microsoft has a business solutions group where they hire key industry experts in an industry, and then they create the architectures and work with customers and create business councils and everything else. Now you had me, who had a master's degree in healthcare, 10 years experience in either working as a nurse practitioner, paramedic, that kind of thing. And I was now designing systems to optimize healthcare provider systems. Want to talk about a role where I excelled? Want to talk about a role where every couple of months I was getting promotions and new stock grants and new bonuses? It was here because I actually knew healthcare. So that's kind of the thing that you really need to learn. So if you whatever industry you need to basically learn it like it's your life. So it's your life. Want to learn how retailers work? Good. Go study retailers. Go talk to retail executives. Find their business points. Find their pain points. Read what industry analysts are saying about these industries. Read what McKinsey is talking about, and Accenture, and Deloitte, and KPMG, and Capgemini, PricewaterhouseCoopers. Focus on what the industry analysts are saying. Listen to the CEOs of these organizations report. Listen to what's going on well and listen to what's not going well. And then you can take all that information and put it in your solution head and say, now what can I do about it? That's architecture. Those are the kind of things you should focus on.
Yeah, and I'll just briefly add to that too. For him, you're talking about a quite saturated market to begin with. So if, like Mike said, widen out, because what might happen is you might find yourself in a situation where instead of actually working on coming up with a improved architecture, what you're really doing is sitting there as the customer now on basically a call with a vendor and trying to pinpoint which vendor you're going to pick. I'm going to pick Shopify. I might have picked Magento. Who else is there? I think Big Commerce, I think, is another one. So you're just picking a platform that already has a predefined architecture. So you're not going to focus so much on actually, as Mike said, going through the processes of it and trying to optimize it for your customer. So definitely think of it, the more specific you are with a solution, the less headroom there is. That's why we always say go a little bit more general. Because if you think about like the cloud, you mentioned cloud architecture too, right? There's about 4 or 5 different cloud service providers. They have a similarity of product lines, but also enough differences. And you also have the idea of hybrid cloud or multi-cloud, right? Where you have a private presence as well as a public. So there's a lot more headroom in trying to wiggle your way around and make a name for yourself and actually improve your income compared to just focusing on an e-commerce platform. So I want to just give you that little bit of that comparison so that you understand. Don't pigeonhole yourself for absolutely no reason. Always allow yourself enough room to grow so that if you decide to do so, you can actually make the money that you deserve. All right. Next question is from Carlos. He says, I am planning my first LinkedIn post on scalable solutions for peak shopping seasons to optimize spend. I'm heading in the right direction, or they're asking, am I heading in the right direction with this type of post?
Carlos, you're going in the exactly opposite direction you want to go to. Let me have you think like an architect. I think you're brand new to us. So if I spend $100,000 for it and get nothing back, I just wasted $100,000. If I spend $1 billion and get $5 billion back, I had a good return on investment. So it has absolutely zero to do with what they're spending and everything to do with the value someone's actually receiving. So I don't care what a company spends. It's meaningless information. What I care is their profitability. Okay, if an organization spends $100 million to generate $30 million of sales, they lost $70 million, let alone the cost of the goods sold. This is an absolute disaster. If I've got a business that spends no money on ads and generates $3 million and it has no expenses, that's a big business. That's a business that's doing great. So you see how you can look at two things in the exact perspective. So it's not about what they're spending. And the second thing is how do you design a scalable solution without knowing the client's needs? And Carlos, again, so we have to be trusted advisors. So when I was in medicine, I was a trusted advisor. When I worked in architect, I was a trusted advisor. So let's talk about what it takes to be a trusted advisor. A trusted advisor walks in, learns that organization's unique needs, that organization's unique vision, that organization's challenges. Okay. When I was a kid, Kmart was the biggest thing in the world. Walmart, I never even heard of. But what were the differences that Walmart made with its technology systems, its supply chain, its just-in-time inventory strategy, its marketing, its retail stores, its processes that enabled Walmart to be one of the global dominant retailers, and Kmart basically died. That's what I'm referring to. So stop thinking about the tech, get that out of your head, and start thinking about the people, the processes, and technology. That's the key that you're actually dealing with. So that's the focus. So what is the strategy? How does the strategy align with the organization's business needs? For example, let's say we look at Amazon, the retailer. Basically, their entire site makes no money, or almost no money. The only thing that brings in any money is Amazon Web Services. Amazon has 1.5 million people working for it. And they earn less money than NVIDIA with 26,000 people. And they earn less money than Microsoft with 250,000 people. Imagine having, 25 times 4, 4 times 100, and then times 15. So Amazon has 60 times more people than NVIDIA and earns less. What's that telling you about NVIDIA's operations versus Amazon's operation? Who runs a tighter ship? Who has greater revenue per employee? Who has greater net profit per employee? But see, they're in different businesses. We can't exactly compare them. But that's the key. So focus on the end goals of your client. What could you do for a retailer? What is the new secret sauce that a retailer could do to get closer to their clients? What new tools do we have to learn a client's behavior patterns and make recommendations for them on the things that they may like? Does AI offer us a new business process? Does AI offer a recommendation engine for a retailer? Do we have an ability to add some agility that can help a client add new market capacity? That's the architecture piece. Not optimizing spending, optimizing results. Now, why do we keep talking about optimizing cloud spending? Well, here's the reason. People were basically lied to. They were taught like an AWS cloud practitioner or anybody else's thing, and they were told the cloud's cheaper because we have an economy of scale. Now, here's the thing. It is cheaper for Amazon to buy our products than me. They have an economy of scale. But let's say my architecture in my house. I have a 10 server OpenStack cloud. I paid 10 grand for these servers. Now I could buy them for 5 grand. Amazon wants $1,100 a month for these servers. I paid 10 grand for them. I bought 10 servers for $10,000. Amazon wants $11,000 a month each month to run them. Just that. In my environment, I have a next generation firewall. I don't pay for internet access. I've got 2 1 gig connections. One's free from my homeowners association. Another one I pay $99 a month. And believe me, we push data. It's cheaper. A $300,000 server from Dell costs $6 million over 4 years in AWS. Does that mean we shouldn't use the cloud, Carlos? Of course not. There's many great things we have on the cloud. But when people went from the data center to the cloud and their costs went up 2 times, 3 times, or more, now all of a sudden they're worried about the spending. Prior to that, they were worried about the results. So, when you have this concept and you say in the cloud, you've got, You've got an economy of scale. That's true. That wasn't lying. What was misleading is when you've got an organization with 1.5 million people, it takes a lot to make a change. And change is slow and change is expensive. When you've got a small, nimble organization, you may pay 10% more for the gear itself. But it might cost you 1/8 to make a change that it would in reality in a hyperscale organization. And that's why if you look at the speed of any government, the UK government, the Australia government, the US government, I don't care. They can never be as efficient as a small business because they're bigger and they've got a lot more people. Does that mean they're bad at what they do? No. It just means the bigger you are, the less efficient you're going to be. So the cloud can never be It can never be cheaper in most cases. And here's the reason why. The cloud provider has to build the same data center as you do, which means they need to buy the same routers, the same switches, the same lasers, the same optics. Then they got to buy the same servers that you do, the same storage area networks that you do. Now they got to go build it and run it, the same as you do. Now they got to hire a sales staff, a marketing staff, a customer service staff, and now they got to go spend millions and billions of dollars on promotion and other things. And that's why it has to get 2 to 3 times more expensive. And that's the typical cost, 2 to 3 times more expensive. And it's okay because the cloud gives us agility and scalability, which is worth it. But it's a key of saying we're willing to pay more for this and this and this because of this reason. We don't get any value. I want to run a AI server in the cloud. I'll spend less than 1 month to buy the GPU than it'll cost me to run the AI server in the cloud. It'll cost me less to buy it than 1 month in the cloud. That's crazy, but it's reality. But that doesn't mean I shouldn't run 1,000 GPUs in the cloud for 15 days to train an AI model and then bring it back to the data center. So that's really the key. Focus on the outcomes, not the cost. If your outcomes are making money for your client, nobody cares about the cost. If you're delivering something and it provides no value, like 70 to 80% of cloud architectures provide zero value. A lot of that is because companies are designing systems without knowing the client's needs, or they're using an architecture framework that makes a recommendation. Like everybody needs surgery. Well, what if they don't need surgery? So I kind of hope that helps. But Carlos, your thinking is good. Let's just tailor it a little boring. You're going to do great.
All right, let's take a look at the next question, please. And this is a question from Jose. They're asking, another question for later is where to apply for jobs and avoid bots, fake posts, and what websites you recommend. So basically, how does he avoid fake job postings and what would be some credible sources for him to look?
Okay, Jose, this is a very good question. I'm glad you asked it. What if I told you that in most cases, applying for jobs is the worst way to get hired? So I'm going to tell you why I say this. Now, I would tell you that I didn't apply for jobs in my career. And for the most part, that's true. I did get hired by Cisco because I bought a Mac Pro, one of the first Mac Pros for the house. And I remember I bought it back in 2002. And I went to I think it was CompUSA at the time. and they had these little speakers that were my wife called cute. There was this fancy monitor, and there was this dual processor G4 Mac. It was like $4,800, and my wife said, "It's cute. Buy it. It looks cute. It's furniture." So I went, okay. I got the green light to go spend a ridiculous amount of money on this workstation, which I was all excited about. So I bought this computer, and my wife applied for Cisco while I was in Dubai. And while I left Dubai, I went to Reading, UK, gave a presentation, and all of a sudden I got a call from Cisco. "Hey, we're talking to you about your application." I'm like, oh, wait, I bought a Mac. My wife finally figured out how to use the computer, and she emailed she applied to Cisco. I guess I'm going to talk to them, and I did there. But generally speaking, I don't apply. So, Jose, the best way to get hired is to find a very good recruiter. And here's the reason why. Jose, you've got no experience. You're brand new. You apply for a job, and you know what you get? This person behind the screen with a rubber stamp that says reject, 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 reject. Now, by comparison, if you find a good executive recruiter and Mark's actually the hiring manager, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to call Mark, and I can tell you that Christina Marino from ITXL in New York is one of the best recruiters I've ever worked with. She's placed me in 2 of the 5 jobs. If I'm the recruiter and Mark's the hiring manager, I'm going to say, "Hi, Mark, how are you today? Mark, I want to tell you about Jose. I had a chance to speak with Jose. He's very smart. He's very articulate. He's highly motivated. Our team really put him through the ringer and grilled him through some technology things. And he understands very well demilitarized zone strategy, SIEM systems, data loss prevention systems. He's quite good. He's got good knowledge on network security and other things as well. I think you should talk to him." Now, Jose, he interviews with Mark. Mike likes you, and Mark says, "Okay, I'm going to make you an offer." He then says, "I'm going to make you apply for the job because it's mandatory, but don't worry, I've hired you anyway." He calls HR. He tells them that he's offering you a position. You get hired and you work. Now, 9 months later, you get an auto rejection letter from HR because you didn't meet their minimum requirements, but who cares because you're already hiring. That's how bad those internal recruiters are. What happens is they don't know who you are and they don't know how to gauge you. So they put up roadblocks like 3 Olympic gold medals, 25 years experience in these 10 different careers, and they list every possible skill for every possible tech career in the entire world, which unless you can live 3,000 years like a vampire, you couldn't possibly master them all. So then they send them to us hiring managers and we interview them. And we're like, "I can't hire, can't hire, can't hire." And then we go to a tech recruiter. So here's my advice. Find a good tech recruiter, or 2. They're worth their weight in gold, diamonds, and platinum. 2, learn how to create content and brand yourself on LinkedIn. If I create a paper or a video or something good, I am bombarded that day with people that want to hire me. And I've got a lot of students that have the same thing. Now, what's good versus what's out there? If you made it with ChatGPT, don't put it out there. It's going to be embarrassment of yourself. The whole point of this is to show that you have thought and you have an independent mind. And if you use AI to create the post, you just showed me you don't. I'm interested in your thinking, your level of understanding, your motivation. This is what I want to see. How hard you're willing to work. So, Jose, when you talk to employers, here's what they say what they want. They want someone that's competent to do the job. Now, you'll take our CCSP, which is going to be completely free. You said you're going to sign up. You're going to see that that's the intro. And you'll compare that to the pre-fundamentals that you got in the Security Plus. And I bet you learned 10 times more than you learned along the way. That's a starting point. Just a starting point. Now, they're going to want a lot more competency than that. And that's okay, too, because you can go out there and you can learn it. So I want to know that you're able to do the job when I interview you. I want to know that I can trust you, which means on the interview, you need to be honest. And your resume needs to look and feel honest, as is your LinkedIn profile. Jose, I can tell you 90% of the resumes that I actually look for are fake. And here's how I know they're fake. They're either a person that made up their own job, or they put together technologies that they did in a manner that don't fit together on their resume. And that shows they don't understand and they're lying to me. So I can't hire them either. I also want to know your communication skills. And why do I care about your communication skills so much? It's your ability to make a mistake or not make a mistake, because how you get the information determines your level of success. So I want to see it. I want to see your energy, your enthusiasm, and passion for the work as a hiring manager. And if I don't see it, or I think somebody looks lazy or unmotivated, again, can't hire. And organizations are having a very hard time finding people that are willing to work. So when you go out there and create content, show that you're willing to go above and beyond and you want to work and you're excited to work and you're motivated and you're positive. The next thing I care about is your level of emotional intelligence. So if you're making posts out there that are alienated certain people, you show me I can't hire you. If you're making positive posts, again, it's something that's really good. You can keep that in the back of your mind. I also care what kind of a team player you are and how willing you are to go above and beyond. So creating the right kind of content on social media, showing you as a problem solver, showing you a degree of expertise and competency, again, would be something that's good. That's going to get the world to see you. And don't go out there and rewrite how to install an Apache web server on Ubuntu. That's silly. I can basically look sudo apt install HTTPD or sudo apt install Apache if it's Ubuntu. It's something like that. It's simple. It's meaningless. I don't want to see a 20-page document on that. I want to see a document showing you and your thinking and how you can actually solve problems. You do that, the world will come to you. And please feel free to join us on one. I know you're more interested in engineering than architecture, but please feel free to join us in our How to Get a Cloud Job webinar. I'm happy to speak face-to-face with you. Even if it's not related to art training, I still want to help you. And with that face-to-face conversation, I know we can do more.
Yeah, and just I'm going to put it actually in the chat. We won't have time to actually go into details, but David Linthicum, who heads up our AI architect program, he recently made a specific post about it because he also found out there were a lot of fake job postings or ghost postings within the AI actual industry. So what I'll do is I'll put it into the chat so that you can review it and read it. He also gives some insight as to the why this might be happening. We just don't have time to go into it right now, but I'll put that in there in a couple of minutes for you so you can review it. So let's go on to the next question then, please. So it is from 2N Hughes. I've been doing hands-on cloud projects to become a cloud architect and writing about it every day. But when I go into interviews, I have no idea how to answer. What am I doing wrong?
2N Hughes, and we're going to have to come back to you. What are you doing with regards to cloud projects? Because 99% of the time, the people that are doing cloud projects are being taught by a certification provider to set up a Linux machine or to set up a WordPress website or to create a table in DynamoDB, or it has everything to do with somebody else's job and has nothing to do with architecture. So let's talk about a real cloud project for a minute for an architect. So let's talk about, say, the 20 different kinds of documents we write as an architect. Now, 2N Hughes, I want to make it clear. As an architect, we don't code. We don't configure. There's no Python. There's no DevOps. There's no SysOps. There's no development. There's no hands-on anything. No infrastructure as code. So if you're out there producing things like this, it's not going to teach you anything about architecture. It's going to teach you about systems administration. So here's where we want to go to. So let me just talk about the types of documents we create. So I'd say half of our time as an architect is related to document creation. So you said, right, you're doing things like Linux website. That makes 100%. So what if I told you that an architect, you'll be responding to requests for information, requests for proposal, requests for quotes or pricing. You'll be building business cases. You'll be building statements of work. You'll be writing documents on guiding architecture principles. You'll be writing documents on the technology reference models or architectural guidelines for the business. You might be creation of something called the landscape diagram or a solution diagram. You may be working with various enterprise architecture frameworks like TOGAF or Zachman along the way. You're going to be documenting current state architecture overviews. You'll be demonstrating gap analysis between current and future plans. You'll be creating documents on enterprise data models or IT governance frameworks or security architecture documents or integration strategy overviews, risk management reports, what have you. Maybe you'll be writing documents on performance metrics or KPI dashboards. You'll be doing this. So when you're not writing, what else are you going to be doing? You're going to be presenting and you're going to be selling. So you'll be giving presentations like architecture vision presentations, future state architecture proposals, gap analysis reports. You'll be doing a lot of business capability modeling and giving presentations on this, enterprise data model presentations, cloud migration strategy presentations, cost optimization presentations, business value presentations, value chain presentations, etc. So that's the job. You're going to be selling things. You're going to be obtaining stakeholder requirements. So if you show me that you know how to write a Python script, and I need you to give a presentation to the board to close $1 billion deal, you just showed me that you're the wrong kind of person. So let's get you to fix your project. So please get that free Cloud Architect Career Guide. because you have to be doing and showing that you can do the job. And basically right now, what you're showing is you can do a cloud admin to a junior level cloud engineer's job, not architecture. So you're going to need training in architecture, how to obtain the custom requirements, how to examine that client's business, how to examine their network, their data center, their cloud, how to examine their security. And when you have that skill and someone asks you an interview question, you'll be able to do it. So for example, if someone asked me, Mike, how do you build an architecture team? If Mark asked me that, which is the kind of thing I'm assuming they're asking you, I'd say, well, the first thing I need to do is visit the client. Then I need to quantify the opportunity for the client. Then I have to calculate the expected value of the opportunity, which is basically our close rate times the revenue that we could potentially get if we close this. From there, now that we've quantified the opportunity, I now need to go to my organization. I need to go to my organization's leadership, and I need to build a business case of why I need 50 people that are $200,000 a year for the next 9 months, and show that the expected value of my opportunity to win this deal is worth me getting these resources from the company. From there, it's about creating the team, going through the team stages of forming, storming, norming, and performing, creating team building. That's the kind of stuff that I want to hear. And that's what I assume they're asking you about. You can tell me in the chat box if this is what they're asking you about. But that's the kind of thing I ask an architect about. And if you're working on Python scripts, that's great if you want to be writing Python scripts, if you like as a software developer. Terraform scripts for a cloud engineer or a DevOps engineer. Again, that's a different job. Working on Linux, that would be great for a cloud engineer, a DevOps engineer, a sysadmin, but again, it's not our job. Working on websites, we design websites. We don't work on websites. So again, it's the same kind of thing. So it's the specificity of training. If you want to be an airplane pilot, you go to flight school. Want to be a physician, you go there. You can't kind of learn some of these things. You got to know what you need. I hope that helps you too, in Hughes.
Okay, let's move on to the next question, please. And this is from Eden N. It says, hi, Mike and Mark. Thanks a lot for the way you do. Thanks a lot for what you do. How does the Live Cloud Architect program work? Is it self-paced, online, instructor-led, or a mix?
So Eden, it's a little of everything. So here's how it works. When you sign up, there will be live classes on Zoom 3 days per week. 2 will typically be technical classes. 1 will be a business class. And I teach at least approximately half of these classes. The other 50% of the classes may be architects that work for various cloud providers, enterprise architects. Sometimes David Lithicum teaches a class, again, another cloud architect. We have PhD business school professors, a bunch of MBAs teaching some of the business things. That's why I teach half, because sometimes there's people that are better than me in teaching a class. If it's on software-defined network, I'm going to have Mark teach it. If it's on BGP, I'm going to teach it, for example. It just to put it about it, because you got to use the best person for the job. So there is that. So we will have live classes 3 days per week. Now, in between live classes, there will be a lot of work for you to do. First, there'll be upwards of 1,000 hours of training on everything you need to know: business, leadership skills, tech, everything, architecture. There'll be architecture projects for you to do, which is where you'll take a company's needs, you'll go through the company's challenge, you'll design the architecture, document the architecture, present it back to us, create your architecture documents. You'll respond to RFIs, RFPs, RFQs. You will do real world things that architects do every single day of the week. And you're going to have a great time with it. You will stay in our program until you are hired. I'm going to say that again. You will stay in at least the online portion of our program until you are hired. Because I want to know that if you take your training, you're here. Now, how do we make it work? We do no batches whatsoever. Because the online classes are standalone. No matter when you join, we'll repeat the class. So you'll get them no matter what. And that way I can take you whenever you're there. And you'll stay in the program until you're hired. And that way we have such a high rate of return. Because unless you quit on you and you give up doing our program, what's waiting for you at the end of the training is a cloud architect job or a cloud security architect job or whatever it is. So live, in class, on your own, give a presentation, practice the interview, turn in a video. We'll give you feedback on it and we'll make you better. Whether it's your presentations, your sales skills, your negotiation skills, and your business acumen, your architecture skills, your network skills, your security skills, we cover it all. And I'm pretty excited to say that people from this program are working at Apple and Amazon and Cisco and IBM and Google and Accenture, Deloitte, KPMG, Capgemini, PricewaterhouseCoopers, TELUS, JP Morgan Chase Bank, PNC Bank, Bell Media, MUFG Bank, Caliance, NatWest, the insurance company, CDW, Architect, Provideo over there in the UK. I mean, any company you can possibly think of, we've got graduates working there. I hope I answered your question there, Aiden. Please feel free to ask more.
The key word I would probably say about the program is flexibility. That's really what it provides you. You have a structured approach with the on-demand content that you can go through, and then the flexibility comes in with the actual life, the instructor-led training. And the nice thing too is we got group projects. So this is where you actually get to put your actual architect hat on and go through projects, looking at an RFP, for example, request for, now my mind is like proposal. You'll have to understand how that is done and then answer it and then give a presentation. So there's a mix of these things, but definitely flexibility. We want to be able to give you a program that allows you to grow and, of course, excel at it, but at your particular pace. That's why we never kick anyone out of the program, because some people may take a year, other people take 3 months, some people may take 15 months. It's going to be up to you, but we're here to support you throughout the entire journey. So keep that in mind. And if you got any more questions, on Thursday, we'll have how to get your first cloud architect job as well. So you can go in there. If you want to ask some more questions, we'll be glad to answer them then.
Absolutely.
All right, let's take a look at our next question, please. And it's going to be from Kevin. By the way, welcome back, Kevin. Haven't spoken to you in a long time. But he says, how do I use GoCloud projects in an interview?
Well, when you go on an interview, someone's going to ask you about the things that are on your resume. So if you've delivered presentations to a C-suite audience, I would talk about it. If you've responded to RFIs, RFPs, RFQs, I would talk about it. If you've presented an architecture that you designed to the C-suite, I would talk about it. If you led or facilitated a meeting, I would talk about it. So I would talk about all the things that you're doing. Now, Kevin, I still know you, and I watch the way you present some of these things, and you still are missing some of the depth. And what happens is when you describe things, because I've listened to you, it doesn't still sound right yet. Now, you are very smart, you are very motivated, but we all learn at different times. So a little bit more on getting it and following it through and doing the back end work, and you should be good to go. But that's the way I would do it. The same way I would do anything else. And that's honestly where people get in trouble. They put stuff on the resume that they don't know. So what have you done? You've designed systems, you've presented systems, you've designed secure networking, you've designed AI architectures, you've designed wide area network architectures, you've designed various network architectures. Talk about it, but make sure that you know how to talk about it. It's pretty easy stuff. Chris, we can go to the next one, or Tyrone, whoever's back there.
And this is going to be, all right, so this is going to be, I believe, about 3 parts. So just bear with me here for a moment, Mike. Question is from John O. He says, I've done 4 interviews for security engineering manager role, which does not involve implementation, but client relationship and interaction with the technical team, basically people management. I'm having my final round, which is interview presentation to a client. This is going to include senior management, procurement, and the CTO and the CISO. Do I structure my presentation to a business audience or tech audience, or both? And then finally, it's difficult to do both in one presentation. What do you advise?
Okay, John O. Do you live in the UK, and are you from Nigeria? Because if you are, I think you are, I am so happy to see you. If you're not who I think you are, well, I'm still happy to see you as well, but I think I know who you are by your name. So if you're presenting to an executive audience or a senior management, give a business presentation to them. It will not be possible to present to both at the same time. And that's why typically we do an engineering presentation to the tech team and a different presentation to the C-suite. And if we try to hybridize it, it's all going to look bad. So when you're dealing with executives, John, I knew it was you. So the first thing I want you to do is start with the solution in mind. So let's talk about the way an engineer presents something versus the way an executive presents something. An engineer that wants to push an MPLS-enabled network, and John, I know you, and I know you know a lot of networks, is going to say, oh, well, we're going to need these routers, and we're going to need this label switching protocol or tag switching protocol, and we're going to need an interior gateway protocol, and we're going to need these signaling protocols. That's for the engineers. And they talk about all the problems and then how they get to the final solution. When you presented as an executive, somebody brought you in because they already know about a problem. You don't need to tell them about the problem. They know that you need to present the solution. So when you give this presentation, my security architecture for your business is this. The reasons we've adopted this are X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3. You do that, and you're going to win. Now, John, I am completely not surprised that you're doing well on all these interviews. I met you when you were in school. I knew you took a great job. I think you're working on your master's degree. I think at even one point you were working on a CCIE. So, John, you're going to do really well. Your business acumen is strong. Your character and personality are very likable. I expect it to be really great. So let me know. And if you need anything, let us know, John. I'm so happy to see your continued success. And if you're on the last interview, make it a good presentation for the business.
Yeah. And I'll add this to you, John. Mike already answered it. Definitely go for the business side of things because, number one, you're not really interviewing for a technical role. You'll have to know some technical, but that's not the gist of it. But this is what I've generally recommended to students privately and those that engage on me. If you ever put in a situation, number one, you need to know who's in the room. And based on who's in the room, you'll actually build your presentation out for those people in the room. And you'll need to know who the decision makers are. So in this case, you're doing an interview. So if you know who the absolute decision maker is, tailor your presentation towards them. Because it's going to be the same way when you're talking to a customer. If there are particular pain points they need to address, you need to address them in a way that the person who has actually the ability to authorize the budget and actually make the changes, they need to like it, they need to approve it. If you find yourself in a situation, and this is not going to go forward once you get this job and you're in it, if you're ever presented with a situation where you have both, before you ever start your presentation, whatever it may be, that demo that you're doing, I would definitely see if it's okay if you can split the demo in two parts. And if preferred, not on the same day. One that you stick to the non-technical aspects, meaning business drivers, because in the end, that will get you the money anyway and will get you the actual contract, meaning you get the people, the business. Then have a second presentation ready. And that's where you can now get into the nitty-gritty details of an actual solution. And if you're an architect, that's also the time now where you bring in the subject matter expert. Perhaps it is another engineer. Bring them in. Let them demonstrate and explain some of the technicals of the actual solution that you're trying to propose. So definitely separate them because you have a higher likelihood of success in actually getting that customer on board, or in your case, on getting the job. You never ever want to try to mix it. You're going to have enough things that you got to deal with from your own nerves, the way you're going to present it. People are going to be different learners and listeners to begin with. If you speak languages that the CEO, in your case, the CTO and the CISO don't understand, it's going to fall on deaf ear. So use common sense in this. Switch the perspective to their perspective, and then let that presentation be guided based on who you're presenting to. Key is communication with them as well.
Yeah.
Great question, though, John. All right, let's take a look at the next question. This is from Pravan. They're asking, hey, Mike, I'm a recent graduate Microsoft CSE. I have a good knowledge of AWS and building projects and associate solution architect and developer. Been applying for jobs for about 6 months, but no results. Any advice?
So Pawan, first, what job are you looking for? So I hate to say this, but I'm going to give you the employer perspective so I can help you. I don't care about anybody's master's or PhDs in technology, because when I know they get out of school, they won't have the skills for any one job. They'll probably know how to code, but they won't have enough of an experience. I also don't care about the solution architect associate and the developer associate, and here's the reason why. They are what I call prerequisites. The knowledge that you'll gain in an AWS solutions architect professional, I'm not going to say the professional, and I'm not even going to consider the associate right now, is the name of a service and how to configure that. Now, Pavan, let me talk about why I don't care about that anymore. One DevOps engineer can replace 50 people that used to configure things manually. Regarding a Python script or a Terraform script or a Bash shell script, I can use AI to do it. You know, ChatGPT did a good job. Claude 3.5 did an even better job. You should see the model that NVIDIA just released just last week. So all that stuff that you're talking about are skills that I typically don't need to hire somebody for. I also don't care about any of the cloud projects you've done on your own. And the reason I don't care about what cloud projects you've done on your own is who picked the projects for you. What problems were you trying to solve with that project? Were you just kind of there just doing your own thing? And that's the problem. So the first thing is, what job do you want? And then what are we going to do to get you the skills? Now, the degrees that are coming out of school are so bad that basically speaking, over 50% of employers have dropped degree requirements because people are coming out of school without the right skills. Yes, I have 2 master's degrees too, and thankfully none of them are in tech. One's in business and the other is in healthcare. I realized, and I'll tell you what I did, and I went at my introduction to tech was a CCNA, a CCNP, a CCDA, a CCDP, an MCSE, and a CCIE. The hardest exam in the world was my intro. Now, I'm not saying you need to do that, but I'm saying we need to figure out what you want. So, first, do you want to be a solutions architect? Do you want to be a cloud engineer? Do you want to be a DevOps engineer? Or do you want to be a developer? First thing we have to do is figure that out. Then we have to figure out what are the right skills that you need for those jobs. And they're all different. So don't get a bunch of associate certifications. What an associate certification to an employer means, come back a year or 2 from now, you may be ready for a job. A professional certification means there's a 5 to 10% chance you're going to know something. Wow. So I want to talk about that recently. I know with an associate certification, chances are you won't be able to do anything. And I know with a professional certification, there's a 5 to 10% chance you do. So how do you do what you do? Well, if you upgrade your solution architect associate to the solution architect professional, if that's your goal. If you wanted to be a solution architect, now what else would I do? I would add an architecture certification like TOGAF, and I would probably also add a security or a networking certification, because what is the cloud? Someone else's network in a data center. So I would either get a CCNP in networking or a CISSP in security. And those 3 together, now you're up to 25% of the skills you need for a job. Now let's talk about what those other skills, and they're going to be there. If it's an architect, it's going to be about leading teams and building business cases and designing systems, giving C-suite presentations, for example, evaluating technology platforms, creation of architecture documents, and somebody's going to have to teach you that because you're not going to learn that in school. Now, maybe you want to be a cloud engineer. That'd be great. Now you want to be a cloud engineer, for example, which is a systems builder. Take that solution architect associate and upgrade it to a solutions architect professional. Now you want to be an engineer. You're going to be doing a lot of work on Linux. Go get a Red Hat certified engineer. And that's my intro to Linux certification for somebody. Now, after that, you want to be an engineer, get a Terraform certification and a Kubernetes certification. And now you know 40% of the job, 50% of the job. Now you're going to go have to do a bunch of building things. Now, I don't care if you know AWS. It's meaningless to me. I care if you know cloud. And why is AWS meaningless to me? Because 98% of organizations use more than one cloud. Which means not only do I need you to know AWS, I need you to know why you can't use DynamoDB, why you can't use Elastic Compute Service, why you can't use Amazon Aurora, and all the other stuff that you can't use multi-cloud. That's even more important for them you to know how to use it. So I need you to understand what it is. So let's figure out the career you want, and then we can guide you. But don't expect some associate certifications are ever going to do anything for you. And that's the dirty little secret. Now, the AWS certifications are also weaker because for a while they did a lot of exam retakes. And for any of the cloud certifications, somebody will take the exam for you. So there's a whole bunch of people teaching these courses that have never worked as an architect, for example, or worked on the cloud. So, passing an exam and doing it is different. If you tell us which job you want, we can tell you the exact set of skills. But that's the key. Where do you want to go? Because right now, I don't know whether you want to be a software developer, a solutions architect, a DevOps engineer, a cloud network engineer, a data engineer, a data architect, a DevOps. You see where I'm coming from? Every one of these jobs needs completely different skills. And unfortunately, universities are what we call general preparedness, which is a little of this, a little of this, a little of that, not enough for any one career. And these associate certifications are much the same thing. They're an intro to an intro, and then we got to figure out what you want to do from there.
Yeah, I think many people always have this impression that once I get college done, once I get a certification done, they're going to throw jobs at me. And I think this is proof of how poorly people are set up from the very beginning. It just shows us that they're selling you a dream that does not exist, and there's so much more to a job. I've had plenty of conversations also with leadership at other organizations that I've been with, and it was always the question, which certification do we need for an employee? And it always came back out, well, I've done the ones you're talking about, and I can tell you from my personal experience, they don't make you job ready for this. So in your case too, Pravan, you seem to have a decent foundation, and I don't mean to undermine the effort it took to get your master's degree. I'm not trying to do that. But what I'm trying to point towards is that you need to start reversing your perspective to what is it that organizations are truly asking for. And what you'll notice, it extends so far beyond simply a technical skill set. And a non-technical skill set, which is probably going to be, and I'm not exaggerating it, probably about 90% of what you do at your job is going to be non-technical compared to 10% of your technical prowess. Let me just tell you that there's so little focus on the non-technical aspect of it. We're talking about writing, communications, verbal, nonverbal, right? Depending on what role you're into, just like Mike, I can't really tell if you are trying to be an engineer or if you're trying to be a software engineer or whatever it may be. But let us know if you're around, what is it that you're really trying to go out for, and then perhaps we can give you a little bit more of a curated answer to your question. All right, so we have a question from Mufasa. They're asking, what are the best books to read about cloud architects or software architecture in general?
Okay, Mufasa, there's really not a lot of books on cloud architecture. There's one company that's got some solution architect books. It's called the Solution Architect Handbook. I picked it up, I looked at it, and I threw it in the trash the second I saw it because it was written by non-architects. It was just garbage. So I will tell you, David Lithicum has an Insider's Guide to Cloud Computing, which is quite good. But for architecture, you're really going to need someone to teach you architecture. So what I could guide you is, if you think of architecture as what it really is, the architect is a management and strategy consultant. We're going into a client, we're learning about their business goals, their business pain points, their business challenges, and we're creating a strategy for them that involves their people, processes, and technology. So what we do is much more related to management consulting. So assuming you have somebody teaching you architecture, there's lots of books on the way McKinsey approaches people or the way you do consulting. So I would more read about consulting methodologies, generating mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive hypotheses, leading teams, learning about finance, learning about economics, learning about marketing, that. Now, software architecture, I know nothing about to guide you. I am a cloud architect, an enterprise architect, a business architect, and I stay away from software. I've always stayed away from software because I think it's the most dangerous career. The reason I think it's the most dangerous career is everybody's taught software, either engineering or something like that, and AI can do it. And I hate to have a skill that everybody and their grandmother has. I want to have a skill that's valuable that no one knows. So I can't guide you very much on software architecture. But cloud architecture, I would learn about consulting. I would learn about economics. I would learn about finance. I would learn about that. Because really, the cloud architecture process is really consulting. Now, you can read that TOGAF framework, the architectural development method. That's going to give you a good guideline of step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a few books on enterprise architecture. There's a book on enterprise architecture as a strategy that was written by Harvard University. Again, that's relatively okay. But in this particular case, what is the cloud? It's somebody else's network and somebody else's data center. So you want to learn about network architectures? Guess who can teach you? Cisco. There's lots of good books to read from Cisco on various forms of network architecture. Books like the CCDE, the one that's more for design, in example, can also be of a big help for you. But there's not a lot of good knowledge out there on architecture. I wish it wasn't the case. Architecture knowledge is in people's heads like Russ White. It's in my head. It's in David Lithicum's. And that's why we're actually trying to teach people architecture for real. But there's that. But if you wanted to be a cloud architect, I wouldn't study software architecture, because remember, the cloud is everything. If you want to be a software architecture, I would look at software architectures and architecture patterns and the types of software that can help various business and software tools. But I don't know a lot about software. And I've tried to stay very far away from software, and I always bring in an application architect for these reasons.
It's always buggy. That's what I say from a network perspective. Yeah. Software is always buggy. If you've never been a network engineer or a network architecture, you don't get the joke. But that's just a joke we have always there, because they always blame it on the network when something goes wrong with the application. But in either case, let's take a look at our next question, please. Yeah. And this one is from Tommy J. How do I gain the business acumen, such as those CEOs and business representatives that are often interviewed on stations such as CNBC, who knows a lot about stocks, market factors, and important business metrics?
So let's actually talk about that. So if you take any training from us, you're going to learn a lot about business. Now, where else can you learn about business? And what is it that most of us that have been executives, that are executives, what do we do? I will tell you, most of us went and got masters and MBAs, masters in business administration, and that taught us a little and then left huge wide gaps. I can tell you how I learned business acumen, Tommy. So the first thing that I did was I went and did an MBA. And when I took my MBA program, Tommy, I realized how much was missing. So if I had a marketing class, I would read 3 to 5 books on marketing, but there were good books on marketing in addition to what I did in class. And I did this for every single class. I read 3 books a week, and I'm not joking, for the first 20 years of my career. Each one was on marketing, economics, macroeconomics, microeconomics, finance, accounting, what have you. Sales, so there's that. Now, if you're in any of our programs in our elite program, we have a very heavy-duty business acumen program. So heavy that it took 3 MBAs and 2 PhD business school professors to actually create it. In our executive programs, our elite programs, or our tech leadership program, we do that. But thankfully, this is the kind of skill that can actually be taught in a school. Learning how to write for executive, so what I did is I basically did 2 MBAs, and I'm not joking. I did 3/4 of an MBA at Drexel University. And when I was 3/4 of the way through, I dropped out because I got a huge job that I never thought I'd ever graduate and get. Then 5 or 6 years later, I felt bad and I went to another university. So and then after I did that, I had an executive coach that I met with for years. I read lots of business books. So if you're going to be an architect, for example, or you're going to be a strategy consultant or a management consultant, this is an everyday process of learn, learn, learn. You want to be an engineer? You got to update your technology skills every day. You want to be an architect? That's going to be the same thing. So I hope I answered your question. For the interest of time, Tommy, we're going to go on to the next question. But if you've got a further question, I'd love to answer it for you.
And I also put a book title for you in there, Tommy, that you can take a look called The Intelligent Investor. That also gives you some good ideas about the different market dynamics. Let's go on to the next question, please.
Okay, I think we did.
Oh, okay. So, my apologies. So it says, what type of articles would you write to brand yourself as a generative AI architect? And what would you learn in order to stand out as an AI architect?
So Tommy, what I would learn as an AI architect is, I don't mean to self-serving, but we have a program that was developed by David Lithicum, because he's been working with AI since 1985. I've only been working with AI since 2001. So he's got more knowledge there, and he created our architect program. Because everything else that's out there is engineering. Now, what would I write? Well, and Chris or somebody from my team, pop a link to it. I just want people to know what we do, and they can see the syllabus of what we train in there. Now, what would I do to brand myself? Well, I would first pick what could I do for the business with generative AI. So, Tommy, one of the things we have to realize is that 70 to 80% of all cloud architectures are disasters, meaning they cost money and provide no business results. Tommy, do you know what's going to happen with AI? 70 to 80% of these architectures are going to be disasters. And here's the reason why. People are going to take some certification that's going to teach them the name of something and how to configure it. They're going to tell them why it's so great, and they're not going to teach them how to understand the business needs. So what I would do is I might write an article on why it's essential to determine the optimal business process long before designing a AI strategy. I might also write articles on why the quality of your data determines what your AI capabilities are going to be. I might talk about, when should I use a small language model versus a large language model? What are the things that are about it? I might talk about what is agentic AI and how could agentic AI potentially be used. I might write an article, or what are the majority of mistakes that organizations make from an architecture perspective that cause their technology solutions to not work in 70 to 80% of the cases. I might talk about what are the risks of AI in the enterprise, and what types of cybersecurity things and data security things do we need to mitigate these risks. No, Tommy, everything we're talking about is bringing it up to a business level. That's the AI architecture piece. And honestly, if I wanted AI, I would just take David Lithicum's class. And it's not because we sell it on our website. It's because I have a tremendous amount of respect for David Lithicum. There's a few people that I know in the industry that I just listen to. One is Russ White. He was at Cisco. I think he's at Akamai now. Incredible network architect. When he talked, people listen. David Lithicum's another one that I tend to listen to. Dave Evans was Cisco's chief futurist. Him I always listen to. John Chambers, I always listen to, along with what the CEO of Microsoft is doing and the CEO of IBM. They always have really good things to say. Those are the type of people that I would listen to. I would see what they're thinking, and they're architects, every last one of them, and listen to how they say. You'll learn a lot more. And I know we're actually over time, so let's go to the next one.
There you go. And the next question is from John. It says, in presenting, Mike once said, tell them what the solution is, show evidence, and how it will work for them, aka presentation structure. How do I show the evidence? And then he says, do I research about who has used such solutions before, if any? Any alternative as to how to show evidence?
Okay, so normally, John, I start with the solution up front and then the substantiating evidence. The reason I asked you what is the presentation about is this could change anything. I might start with some statistics about cybersecurity. I might talk about the percentage of risk that most organizations in similar businesses face. I might talk about quantify the type of risk. And I might, if I knew the type of assets the organization had, because I had previously spoke to them, I would try to basically create a business impact analysis of losing or compromising one of those assets, if I could. Now, if I don't actually have that, now then I would talk about that might set up a framework, and then I would talk about the architecture you chose and why you chose it. If an organization has to go to the cloud, I would talk about why I would use a hybridized zero trust and defense in depth policy, because there's certain things that each one might use. And I might talk about how zero trust mitigates much of the risks of the cloud, and talk about why the cloud has more risks versus what we could do versus something else. So I'm trying to think about the actual thing, because I'm trying to write a presentation live while we're thinking about it. So if it's about prioritization, I would talk about, let's first evaluate the organization's needs. And what are those needs from a quantification perspective? So it would be about a business impact analysis. It would be, what are the quantitative risks of a compromise? And that be the cost of a data breach, the cost of a critical asset being breached, the cost of an outage, so to speak, and from a quantitative perspective. Then I would talk about a qualitative perspective as it pertains to brand loss and trust. And I would try and pull some statistics on that and its impact on sales. I would definitely try to do something like that. Then I would talk about the actual strategy and why. Why did you make the recommendations? What's the substantiating evidence? So if you feel that organization needs a demilitarized zone that has 2 sets of firewalls from different vendors and an IPS system and this, and this, Why did you pick that? Why did you pick those vendors? Why did you choose Palo Alto or Cisco? Is it based on market share? Is it based on experience with XYZ kind of thing? And these are the types of systems that I'm going through. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. And that's how I would do it.
And I'll add something small to it before we move on. Something that I would recommend you do. This is either if you have an interview or if you're going to be in front of a customer. Try within the 7 to 10 minutes, lay out the outcome for them. So basically, you show them the end result first. To give you a little example why this works so well, if you've ever seen a cooking channel online and they want to teach you how to cook a juicy, wonderful steak, what do they do first? They show you the steak when it's done. They show you how nice golden colored it is. Maybe it's got a bone in it, right? They pick it up, you see the juices flowing off it. You're basically vision building for them that way. So use your first 7 to 10 minutes to vision build with them, give them an idea of what they're going to have, which is going to be part of that evidence. And then you start laying the foundation, as Mike said, for the rest of the actual subject. And that way you're catching them when they're alert. Same at the end, right? Where you're reiterating your points, and in between it, use your 3 to 5 maybe key points, and you keep that momentum going with them. So just a little example of what you can do with that. Now, do we have any more question, Mike, or you want to end it here?
Yeah, there's one from Pawan, and I'm going to ask Pawan questions because I really want to help Pawan. And I want to bring it back to reality for Pawan.
Okay, let me read it for the audience too, so we have it on audio. Pawan is stating, I'm confused about the WT, I'm assuming the role that I should choose. I have good knowledge of cloud, DevOps, and networking. Any suggestions? Right now, I'm applying for cloud, DevOps, system engineering, and solution architect.
So Pavan, first thing I want to say is let's talk about what good knowledge is. Pavan, if I asked you these questions, if I could ask you the 7 types of LSAs and OSPF and what they do and how they're used to calculate a route, could you answer it? If I asked you the difference between BGP being in an active versus an open sent versus an open confirm stage, could you do it? If I asked you about the difference between wait, local preference, AS path, origin code in a BGP route, could you do it? Would you know how to aggregate the routes coming from something? Because that's what I consider good networking knowledge. Same thing with cloud. Could you understand the weaknesses in the cloud infrastructure? Could you explain to me why object storage is slow compared to data center performance? Could you tell me the workarounds that I could do with objects, with block storage in order to give me more data center light performance? Could you tell me the limitations of a virtual machine on the cloud, exactly what those hypervisors are, how those hypervisors work? Can you tell me about escaping from one virtual machine to another virtual machine in a hypervisor attack? Could you talk to me about what to do with the metadata and object storage and why object storage has to be write once, read many times? Because that's what I consider bare minimum entry-level cloud knowledge. Now, if you have that kind of knowledge, then you're in good shape. But since you told me cloud, DevOps, and networking, chances are you don't have good knowledge on anything. And the reason I'm saying this is it's going to take you years or at least 1 year of focus training to know something about any one of them. So that's the reality of what we're talking about here from a manager perspective. So now the question is, which one of these things do you want to learn? What you were taught is the exact opposite of systems engineering. I don't know what you know about DevOps. Do you know how to work with various DevOps tools? Do you know how to set up large-scale Kubernetes clusters? Do you know how to launch 10,000 virtual machines on a cloud in a matter of minutes? If the answer is yes, then you may know DevOps. Do you know which tools are you going to use for testing? And the answer to that, so that's really the thing. So the first thing is we need to figure out what you want. And then we need to figure out, because if you think you can make a career that you've got good knowledge in cloud, DevOps, and networking, I promise you, you probably don't. I've got 25 years experience and I know 0 of DevOps. 0. And you know why it's 0? Because I'm not a DevOps engineer and I never have been. I know 0 about software development. I can't. Mark, what do you know about DevOps? You're a CCIE. You've got lots of advanced training. Do you know anything about DevOps?
I know how to spell it.
Okay, yeah. So, but I promise you, Mark knows networking. And that's the key, is we have to be realistic with ourselves with regards to what we need and what we actually know. For example, Pavan, do you know when I should build a private cloud versus a hybrid cloud versus a hybrid multi-cloud? Can you talk to me about why I can get greater security and performance in the private cloud than the public cloud? Could you talk to me about whether I should choose a software-defined WAN, a SASE WAN, an IPsec WAN, or a private line connecting to the clouds? Can you talk about my options routing from cloud to cloud? To me, that's good knowledge. And I'm hiring, so that's really where I'm coming from. So the first key is, what do you want to do? What's going to make you happy? I don't know that. Now, what I can tell you is architecture will offer you by far the greatest pay and the most career options, and it can't be replaced by AI. Now, what do you want to do in the cloud? I don't know. You want to be a cloud engineer, DevOps engineer, software developer, data architect, data engineer? Again, we need to dive a lot deeper. Let me know if you can answer any of the questions that I've actually asked you. Because if you actually know these things, then we can pick one. But right now, if all you have is a master's degree in cloud computing and an AWS solutions architect professional, we got to start from scratch and start from the beginning. We got to figure out what you know and actually teach you. But maybe you've already been a DevOps engineer, or maybe you've got some knowledge, or you've done things. And that's what I really want to try to find out. Because each one of these skills you're talking about is very different. And I'd love to get you on our How to Get Your First Cloud Job webinar. And quite frankly, if you want, I will look at your LinkedIn profile and I'll tell you on that webinar why people aren't getting back to you if they're not. I'll even give you a 3-question mini interview and try to see what you actually know to make a recommendation. And it's completely free and it's on Zoom, and I'd love to help you. I really would. But we all have to level set with regards to what we know versus what we think we know. And that's the biggest issue that most people have when they start their career. They don't know what they don't know. And that is the biggest challenge that most of us face. I know something about DevOps, but I don't even know what I don't know. And the best way I can describe this, Pavan, is everybody starts out not knowing what they don't know. So when I started my networking thing, I did a Cisco Certified Network Associate exam. Pretty easy, 2,000 pages of reading, no big deal, right? So I have the CCNA, and it's like, oh, this networking thing's easy. I know networking. And then a month later, I took the Cisco Certified Network Professional. Now I had to read about 10,000 pages, and I had to pass 4 exams. When I got out of the Cisco Certified Network Professional, I went, this networking thing's a little bigger than I have. I think I know networking. And then, Pavan, I prepared and passed the Cisco Certified Internet Expert. And I went, oh my God, I don't know anything about networking. Now I'm one of the few. I was 6,000 out of like 3 million people that took an exam and passed it. And now I went on my first project for a big bank, and they're like, Mike, here's all the stuff we got. And I went, I don't know any of that. And then it took me 25 years of actually learning. And that's with the CCIE, which was, it cost as much as a car to pass. And I read 75,000 pages to read it and did 1,000 hours of labs. And after that, I realized what I didn't know. I kind of hope that makes sense.
All righty. Take us home, Mike.
So join us on Thursday on the free webinar, and we can ask you more questions because I really want to help you, and I'm happy to do any assessment there. It's completely free. We'll go over the architect role. We will list 100% of the skills you need. And that way you'll know how to become an architect, regardless of whether you go to business school and learn these things on your and take 10 different training courses or take ours. I just want you to know what to do and have a great career. I want to invite you all for the next 2 weeks of free cybersecurity training. There's 3 major security training certifications out there that's going to get the world to want to talk to you. The CISSP, the CCSP, and the CISM. And it's almost never that you're going to get 2 cybersecurity experts with 35 plus years of network security that's going to teach a free boot camp. Normally it would be $5,000 to $10,000 to learn from us. And even the good one that we recommend is that if you don't take our training is $9,000 for 6 days of training. And that's what it costs. And that's what we're doing it free because Mark and I know what it's like. You know, Mark knows what it's like to come here as an immigrant. My family came here as an immigrant. We both know what it's like to start out and struggle. And that's why we're doing these things. And it's completely free. So please join us. We want to do anything we can to help you. And if you're considering an architecture career, download one of the free guides that are here. Guides on how to be an AI architect or an enterprise architect or a cloud architect, because I want you to get hired. and they will list the skills that you need, because a lot of these jobs, people have it in their mind what they think we do, but they have nothing to do with what we actually do. And that's really the thing. It's easy to think we do something, but when you have the real skills and you go on a real interview, you will have more opportunity than you can imagine. So join us for any of these free things. I've enjoyed spending some time with you. Pavan, you registered for the webinar. Wonderful. I will talk to you. I will interview. I'll look at your resume, assess what you're at, and I am thrilled to make recommendations, as I am for all of you. So look forward to seeing you there. So tomorrow, we're going to have a show about cybersecurity, I believe, that we're going to have some fun with and various things. Completely free. Thursday, the free webinar. And next week, we got all kinds of free training. So I'm getting excited about getting a little geeky there. I know. How are you, Mark, about it?
I'm looking forward to it too. I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it, going to lift the veils from the eyes, give them an idea what security will look like and can look like in the cloud. And I think it's going to be quite a contrast compared to what many people have come accustomed to being taught by the cloud service providers. And that's no slight on them. It's just a different business model, different things that they're trying to advertise. But we're definitely looking forward to being able to share knowledge that extends beyond just a select few vendors, and actually something that you can take and apply towards your future employer and as well as your customers, where it really matters.
Yes. So see you then. In the meantime, take care, everyone, and we'll see you hopefully tomorrow.